Now, I keep seeing accounts on the internet with people on TikTok, some of them German, talking about how they're leaving Germany, that it's a country they no longer recognize. And one of their biggest reasons for leaving Germany seems to be the fact that taxation is at an all time high. And the second one is that they're not getting much in return. And it's also very difficult for them to raise children, like they're afraid for the future of their kids. And so these people usually leave to the United States. From what I've noticed, they go to liberal states. So these people aren't far right extremists. They're individuals that, will carry the Angela Merkel policies in spirit to the new home that they choose in the US, because they're still liberal, right? They know that something is bad with their country, but they can't really articulate what that is. Like for them, living in Germany, it's kind of like a fish living in the water. They don't really notice the water because they're used to it. And so they don't really understand the meta politics, right? Like they don't really get the meta narrative or how things have led to the point where they are. And instead just notice that they're earning less, that the jobs are becoming more demanding. It's even more difficult to get a job. They're paying more for rent, right? And so they believe that, well, there's a problem with Germany, but they don't know what exactly. And so hopefully this video is going to allow me to help them understand what's really going on. Because yes, it is a problem of a fish within the water, where we don't get to see the environment because we've always had this environment. And the big problem that modern governments have is taxation. Now, a lot of people that say taxation is theft are being called cringe and they're being laughed out of the room. But the reality is that we are currently living in a time period where we're actually paying more taxes than any nation has paid ever in human history. Like, you can do your own research if you don't believe me, but the modern nation state is taxing the average citizen far more than any other nation has taxed ever. For example, right, if you have the Roman Empire, which is one of the first serious nation states that Europe had, they would manage to tax people far much lower than today. But, for them it may have felt brutal because taxes were ingrained: labor, tolls, rents, bribes, military requisitions, right? So the taxation felt more brutal, but when you actually look at how much percent of the, like GDP of the Roman Empire that the actual empire managed to seize from its people, it was quite tiny compared to today. The 1,800 liberal states, right? The liberalism that Stargard hates, they were low welfare states. Like, you didn't have a lot in the means of welfare. They had small bureaucracies and very few social transfers. Now, where it actually starts getting to the point where we are now is after World War I and especially after World War II, right? This is where you have the income tax as a concept, you have payroll tax, you have the beginning of the welfare state, you have pensions, healthcare, and education, right? And so this is where we finally get to where we are today, where the idea is that, well, taxation is not theft because you're paying and you're getting something in return, right? Like a thief that steals from you doesn't have any incentive to provide anything for you in return. But the modern state, which manages to tax around 40% of its GDP, not in just direct taxes, but indirect taxes like VAT tax, fines, inflation, carbon tax, right? All of that together, it manages to extract 40% back of its GDP. It makes a promise. It's basically like, yeah, we're going to tax the living shit out of you, but you get free healthcare, you get free education, you get a pension when you're old, right? And so in a normal society, you manage to have this social contract where most people put up with it. And our parents put up with it, and our grandparents put up with it. But in order for it to work, it needs to have legitimacy, which means that the social contract needs to actually exist. What is currently happening in Germany, and it's also happening in many other nations, including Canada and places like the UK, is that the social contract doesn't work. When it comes to education, well, we notice that we now have diploma inflation. And so you have parents that are spending years of their life working so that their child can go to a university. And then he can use that university degree to buy less and to access less than what their parents could. Because now a diploma degree is not something you use to buy things with. It's something that gives you access. And so everybody needs to have it, right? So you end up in a situation where before children were assets, like a 7-year-old could start working on a farm, and if you have like 5 or 6 kids, then they're workers and they're immediately producing in revenue. While now you end up with a kid that's 21 years old. He happens to pay rent in Oxford, rent that mommy and daddy needs to pay. You need to pay for his gas money, electricity bills, food, everything, right? So he can go to a university, and he's 21. Like you're paying an adult in order to have an adult life. It's very difficult for many parents, right? But the thing is, like, once he finally makes it, there's no revenue in return, right? Like he may have a university degree and may not be able to get a job. So what then? You still have to take care of him, right? And chances are he may even be indoctrinated at the education where he's being told that mommy and daddy are fascist bigots. And so now he hates you on top of that. So that's one of the things that people do not like. It's like, okay, I pay taxes, I get that education. And what happens, right? The second problem is healthcare. Sure, you pay taxes so that you get to have a doctor, right? And then you're put on a massive waiting list. By the time a doctor even sees you, maybe the issue that you originally had is gone, or you died, or there's complications. So you follow your contract, you pay your taxes on time, right? Like imagine if you could do this to the government, if you could put the government on a waiting list and I'll pay when I can pay, right? The government wouldn't like that. But when it's your turn to ask the government to give you what you demand, right? Because you paid for that. Like right now I'm healthy and I still pay healthcare. The government gives you the middle finger, right? And this is like a silent way of rationing, I suppose. It's like, let's delay it so that some people that want to cash it out, maybe they won't be able to cash out. And by the way, the system is by design, because I've been to the hospitals. It's not by accident. The level of bureaucracy and the level of paperwork that doctors have to sign and do is making it specifically so that they have more difficulty in seeing a lot of patients. Like, you don't understand, a doctor can, like treat a patient within, I don't know, like 10 minutes. Just, tell him what to get, what lab works to get, and then put the diagnosis, 10 minutes, right? That's it. But when you add the paperwork, it becomes at least 55 minutes at every step. He goes into the hospital, 55 minutes paperwork. He goes and talks to a doctor, another 40 minutes paperwork. He goes and gets the blood works done, 40 more additional minutes of paperwork. And they add up, right? So like one patient that, again, face-to-face, 10 minutes treatment. All of a sudden, it's like hours. And you're talking about hundreds of people, right, per month. So that's with the healthcare system, right? The pension. Well, we notice the pension, you pay your entire life, quite a significant amount. Like, for example, imagine a content creator, right, in Eastern Europe. Probably pays around $6,000, $7,000 a year. Dollars, not Polish zloty or what, right? It's huge in Eastern Europe. And so he pays every single year that. And when he finally needs to get his pension, he may get, $100 a month. And we're talking about an elderly person that also needs to buy medicine and needs to pay heating, right? In theory, he gets the money, right? But like, what you notice that a lot of legislators are doing is that they're moving the pension retirement all the way up until 80. So the idea is like this: you pay your entire life, right? And you don't even know if you're going to become 80. Like, I don't know, like you can get cancer at 65 and die, right? But assuming that you do become 80, like how many more years are you going to be alive? probably 4 or 5, right? So you're paying your entire life $7,000 a year, right? And when you're finally retiring, you don't even get to see much of that. Now, it's not like the government is being malicious and it wants to exploit the public. No, it's simply that the bureaucracy is at such a staggering amount that they don't want to cut any of the expenses. Is that the ruling class is so unpopular that they need to invest a lot in censorship and crackdown mechanisms. And it's also the point where the population can't have kids because of the welfare state, right? Like they're thinking, well, why should I have a kid when it's so expensive and the government can take care of me? And when many people make that same decision, you end up with a situation where people don't have kids, and then the government says, okay, well, we need immigrants. Not all the immigrants are being brought because they work and they become doctors and engineers, right? Like some of them are actually brought with working contracts, and they are being forced to work. But others are also imported so that they can pass hate speech laws, so that they can crack down on dissent and other things, right? If people had children, they're more likely to care about the nation and what's happening because it's like, it's the nation of my children. If people don't have children, they're more likely to become liberal because it's like, well, who fucking cares? If things are bad, like right now, if things are bad, it's very difficult for me to move with the family, right? Because I need to consider, okay, we're living to the US or we're living to Poland, but like my wife doesn't speak Polish, right? Maybe I can, but my wife needs to work at a hospital. Like, what do we do? My child, like, he's going to need kindergarten education, right? It's very difficult for a person that has a family to move. And so this is why people with family are more conservatives. People that are liberal, it's like, oh, things are happening and they're bad. Who fucking cares? I'll just jump over the border, go somewhere else, right? I'll sell this house, boom, move somewhere else. And so this is why you have people putting up with it. But the reality is definitely an erosion of trust and a loss of legitimacy. When the government contract is you pay taxes and in exchange you get welfare, people are noticing that they're paying more and getting less. And so this is why they're leaving, right? Like even the liberals that normally and historically are more willing to put up with it, they're going to stop putting up with it. Because it's one thing when you pay, let's say 30% of what you make in taxes and then you get something in return, right? Which is what our grandparents used to do. But it's another thing when you realize you're paying a lot in taxes and then you're realizing you're paying VAT tax and, you have a traffic incident, like maybe you go over a yellow light or some shit and then huge crippling fines, right? Maybe you're stopped at a traffic stop and they find something wrong with your light, another crippling fine. And people notice that all of it is adding up, right? That life is becoming more and more difficult. They can't articulate why that is. They don't know because nobody knows like how it used to be before World War I, right? The actual liberal states of the 1,800, like people think it's Ancapistan. It's not Ancapistan. It was a very solid system that worked until World War I, right? Like for more than 200 years, it functioned. So what's the solution? I don't know. I mean, I think the solution is that the system collapses. It literally cannot function this way, right? It's not going to be like a lot of people go on the streets and they start rioting and protest. No, but like when you start taxing people a lot and they notice they're not getting anything, your legitimacy crumbles. People start emigrating, rich people leave, right? And your world becomes a third nation eventually, unless things change. Some governments may actually try and have reforms, like the Afuera guy, right? Problem is, it's difficult to make reforms. They're not popular. A lot of people that work with the government and they're grifting with the government are going to suffer. And they have family and children too. And there's going to be opposition. Some nations are so bureaucratic that peaceful reform is not even possible. But even those can collapse, right? Like, for example, the Holy Roman Empire, historically, right? Like, it was the Byzantium as well. They were very bureaucratic heavy. And so they needed reforms. Some of them were more violent than others. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.